Welcome, everyone, to our 27th Salon of the Maternal Gift Economy Breaking Through series, hosted by the International Feminists for a Gift Economy. I'm Letitia Layson. I'll be your moderator. And today, we're very pleased to have Genevieve, Vaughan, Vandana, Shiva is returning. Cassie, Thornton is with us for the first time, and Miki, Kashtan has returned, this time from Ireland. They're going to be offering their insights on the transformation of the gifts of life into money. Genevieve Vaughan, our first speaker, is an independent researcher who lives part-time in Italy and part-time in Texas. She created the multicultural all-women activist foundation for a compassionate society. She founded the Temple of Sekhmet in the Nevada desert, which today, February 26th, is the temple's Saturn return. So everyone send good juju that way. She co-created the network International Feminists for the Gift Economy, which is your host today. She's written many books, the foundational book For Giving, a feminist criticism for exchange, that was published in 1997, and her most recent book, The Gift in the Heart of Language. So Genevieve, please, we welcome you, and let's begin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Letitia. And I'm so happy to be here and see all of you signing in. I've been working on the PowerPoint today, and I lost the first one I did and had to redo it at just a few hours ago. So it may be a little bit more confused than it otherwise would have been. So anyway, here we go. A change, please. There we are. You saw our cool logo for this conference. And it really does say what I'm trying to say, which is, you know, how life is transformed into money, and then money is transformed into rockets that go out into outer space. But anyway, can I have the next slide? We need a diagnosis. We need X-ray eyes to see the underlying patterns that are influencing our society and our lives here at the end of time, so we can understand how we got here and what we still might be able to do about it. In these salons, we have been talking about the hidden maternal gift economy and its logic and values that permeate life without our seeing them. Giving, receiving form a theme with many variations, which we usually do not recognize as such because we do not recognize the primacy of giving and receiving. Exchange, quid pro quo, is one of these variations, and exchange for money is itself a variation on exchange, a variation on that variation of quid pro quo, which is a variation on giving and receiving. Change, please. The analyses we have do not suffice to allow us to understand what is wrong, because we have left out the maternal gift economy, the negative logic of exchange, and we've confused it with gifting. And we have not recognized the negative conceptual, psychosocial character of money. We have been talking in these salons about unilateral giving and receiving, learned from being mothered as the basic pattern of life and understanding. It is the interactive pattern or schema through which we experience the world. We both project gifting upon the world and find its patterns there. If we put the gift back in the analysis of life from which it has been taken away, we can see that money is strange. It is given, but it is not a gift. In fact, as the necessary means of receiving, it contradicts direct giving, and it imposes quantification on things that we usually buy for their qualities. I have been thinking about this strangeness ever since I first encountered Marxism in my 20s and studied it as a young mother. In my first essays, which were published in the early 1980s, I argued that communication is not exchange, and that money as the mediator of exchange is a kind of a one-word material language, alienated communication. I wanted to have our salon on the gifted language before this one on money, because if we don't see the gift in language, we can't see the linguistic character of money as an alienated material word. I have written a lot about this in my books, although I haven't spoken about it in presentations or short articles, because it takes a lot of leading up to, since it's a rather strange idea. However, I do want to talk about it now because I believe this alienated linguistic character of money makes it into a negative conceptual mechanism, and that therefore we must not take it with us into any new society we decide to create. In fact, I think it is also a template for patriarchal dominator structures and systems. In fact, monetized exchange, money itself, and patriarchy cross-validate each other and other oppressive social configurations to form a real-life conceptual system. We need to understand them and change them together so that we do not just cut off one head of the hydra and allow the others to continue to operate unchecked as models of successful domination. The naming process abstracts the product from the maternal gift economy and places it in relation to all the other named products on the market that have been produced for exchange. After the products receive their price in money, they wait in a store outside of time and use until they are sold or bought and real money is given up for them. Marx says that in exchange, the relation between things takes the place of relations between people, and he sees this as a kind of fetishism. I wondered which relations between people were the ones that the relations between commodities took the place of, and I realized that they were the gift relations of mutuality and trust we create through gifting. Alfred Sohn-Rethel, who lived from 1899 to 1990, after many years of studying Marx and especially the exchange of commodities and money, conceived of the idea of the real abstraction, that is, of an abstraction on the reality plane. Products being named in money and kept out of circulation, abstracted until the real money is given up for them, after which they can be used. And the performance of this odd interaction of exchange as the main relational moment or social nexus of human society, all this creates a kind of abstract warp in reality that has many repercussions on what we think and do. Sohn-Rethel registered how strange exchange really was and how we had to hold the products apart from real life, kept unused in stores while waiting for the transaction to take place. That is, he said, there was an abstraction that happens in the context of real life, making this strange shared mental procedure exist on the reality plane. Then Sohn-Rethel showed how Western philosophers have been deeply influenced by this real abstraction, beginning with the pre-Socratics and particularly referencing Newton and the a priori categories of Kant. Sohn-Rethel thought that this abstraction on the reality plane actually influenced our thinking to become more abstract. Richard Seaford, following on Sohn-Rethel's ideas, shows how the exchange abstraction functioned to change the idea of subjectivity in ancient Greece and ancient India at the dawn of coined money. To my mind, the main importance of this idea of the exchange abstraction or real abstraction is that it shows how our thinking can be influenced by our social practice that in itself contains a kind of incarnation of our thinking. We have externalized a concept model that is projected back into our minds through our social practice of exchange and exchange for money. For me, and I believe for Sonrethel, the most mind-blowing part of the first book of Capital is Marx's analysis of money as the general equivalent. The other functions of money Marx sees are measure of value, medium of circulation, and store of value. However, it could not have these without the general equivalent capacity. In the same way that a word can stand for many things of the same kind, the general equivalent stands for many things. And in this process, their general meaning emerges, which we call their value. Here's a picture of generalization. We use an exemplar dog in a one-to-many relation to other dogs to create a generalization and to understand a category, dogs, extracting their common qualities. So we know that this is a category of dogs. And we do the same kind of thing with money and commodities. Anyway, change, please. This one-to-many configuration of money to all commodities is similar to generalization. And Marx finds that what all the products on the market have in common is their value, not a physical, but a social quality, which is expressed in money when it is exchanged for each of them singly. It seems that this idea of generalization and concept formation was accepted until around the 1970s, when other ideas about our mental organization came to the fore, such as Eleanor Roche's prototype theory. However, I would like to emphasize that there are numerous repetitions of the classical generalization form that are played out in our society. There are many one-to-many concept forms that are congruent with the money model. The father and the family, one father, many in the family, owner to properties, the general to the army, the president to the population, representatives to constituencies, Anglos over other races, colonial powers over the colonized, the true religion over others, the 1% over the 99%. In this, the money concept model has united with the patriarchal concept model of the one man over many. That is the capitalist isolated individual in front of many like him. Here's a picture of the general equivalent. I looked around a lot to try to find something that would really be the incarnation of the general equivalent. And this is on the dollar bill. It is just such a, I don't know, such a strong, powerful image. And you can see, the consciousness that is above this body that's not a body, and the pyramid form, obviously, is that power pyramid, and the desert around it. When we look at these one-to-many social configurations on the backdrop of the gift economy, we can see that they are all different ways of taking gifts through power and extraction. I believe that they have generalized because money is an incarnation of our mode of thinking in one-to-many concepts, making our thought processes more abstract because it leaves out quality for quantity and displaces gifts and gifting so as to recuperate them on the other side of the exchange transaction. This becomes a model for one-to-many social structures among us. Here's a one man and the many. And there's so many other images for this, but I didn't get to put them into the PowerPoint today. Do these lookalikes of money form a hidden structure within intersectionality? I believe they are actually the structure of the parasitism of monetized exchange upon the gifting host, where exchange functions according to quantitative categorization itself, as well as denial, subterfuge, leverage, and force. The concept model of money suffuses and informs all the other one-to-many formations and feeds back into the model of the concept itself, making it more abstract and less clear, just because it has an alternative concrete existence. But now it is actually re-abstracting into digital money. In his book, Symbolic Economies, published in English in 1990, or earlier in French, Jean-Joseph Gou shows many social forms that are similar to money as the general equivalent. Gold, speech, monarch, father, phallus, and he discusses them in a Freudian and Lacanian context. The psychological aspects of this and its importance in patriarchy are essential, but I won't try to go into them here. Not only is this proliferation of similar structures happening, but patriarchy and capitalism have become terribly important in pushing us towards the destruction of the planet under the domination of patriarchal fascist governments, with an overlapping of money mimicking structures that plunder the gifts of Mother Earth for the monstrous benefit of the few. The endless increase of money creates the human capitalist icons that take the system to ever more dangerous excesses, while billions starve or die under expensive bombs and from colonially caused starvation, or drown in the seas, or die on roads and at hostile borders, escaping from death at home, trying to immigrate. So it is not just money as such, but money as an incarnation of a thought process that also feeds back into the thought process from the external to the internal, and forward again from the internal to the external. Money provides a streamlined one-to-many model. It is a quo for which each quid must be given. The general social model of the internal generalization concept forming model displaces other possibilities by its constant embodied use in daily transactions and in the mainly inaccessible realms of high finance and banking and government expenditures. As such, it erodes other possible social generalizations like that of the gifting mother or the gifting earth. It also gives power over because, given the invisibility of alternative models, almost anything can be bought, including obedience and subservience. Why is this happening? Money seems to be a harmless coin or paper bill that we dominate completely, materially, just a social tool we put in our pockets and use for keeping accounts so that everyone gets their fair share. However, it is influencing us towards abstraction from gifting and towards following its model, becoming like it, an infinitely expandable one at the top. And this allows us not to see gifting and gifts, while we see only abstract relations among concrete things, which we do not see as gifts. In neoliberalism, we think of ourselves as homo economicus, and all our economic and communitary life is turned toward getting ahead, getting to the top, and becoming like money. Abstracting from gifting and from mothering and children places the whole realm of the gift beneath that of exchange. Beneath in the sense that it is made invisible, unimportant, unrealistic as a way of life, ungeneralizable, and in the context of the market, it is penalized and often self-sacrificial. This allows gifting to serve as the host of a parasitic market that functions by invisibly taking gifts as a matter of course. It does this through the mechanisms of the gift of surplus labor, into which also flows the value of the unpaid gift housework and the free gifts of nature, none of which are even quantified until the product is sold and they are named deserved profit. Psychology of gifts and psychology of greed. In maternal gifting, the giver investigates the need of the receiver and produces or procures something to satisfy it appropriately. Doing this, she implies the intrinsic value of the receiver for her, Otherwise, she would not have given. I call this the implication of gift value, and it is registered in the receiver as self-esteem. This seems to have been transferred into an implication of the market. The more gifts the capitalist can extract, the more intrinsically valuable she appears to others and to herself to be. The more her self-esteem is enhanced. Gift value is not seen by economists who do not see the gifting economy in its own terms, but only as a failed exchange. Even economists of care mainly want to bring the gift economy into the exchange economy rather than transform the economy as a whole towards gifting. Nevertheless, gift value continues to exist as an implication and motivates many of our actions, which we do in order to receive that implication, even when we are blind to its source in maternal gifting. For example, if receiving the gifts of others implies a gift value, even the intrinsic value of an individual and causes self-esteem, the individual may try to get as many gifts as possible by leveraging, extorting, and plundering them, even though neither those who are exploited nor the exploiters know this has anything to do with gifting. This would be an explanation of the motivation of patriarchal capitalist hubris and greed. From this perspective, we can see that it is not just an issue of gender that tries to keep women subservient, but the need of the parasitic monetized exchange economy to keep the gifting economic host, of which women and especially mothers are the core, invisible, reproductive, and under control. Capitalism is patriarchal just for that reason, that patriarchy in league with money dominates the gifters and blinds them to their own oppression while making them dependent upon the parasitic market mechanism to provide them through their own jobs or those of their family members who have been nurtured free by them with the means of giving. Because market exchange has taken over and permeated almost every aspect of our lives and is now inserting itself into our conscious and unconscious minds through internet advertising and surveillance, we barely protest and embrace it as real and normal, the way things are. As the mediator of exchange, money is omnipresent, but it is also omnipresent as the store of value in immense holdings of capital that form the backdrop upon which the lives of rich and poor proceed. As such, it has the potential for a huge influence over the way we think and what we think. I believe it is up to those of us, women particularly, who are not altogether caught in the market processes and who are not making ourselves in the image of money, to think our way out of these boxes and embrace the gift economy and its values for the good of all. Thank you.
Beautiful, Jen. Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you.
very full. And as you can see, people are asking. So we will definitely provide Jen's PowerPoint when we put up this video recording at the website. So that was very full. Very, very full. Our next speaker is Vandana Shiva. Vandana Shiva, thank you so much for staying up tonight. I know it's very late where you are in India, and we are always so happy to have you with us. Vandana was trained as a physicist, did her PhD in the subject of hidden valuables and non-locality in quantum physics. She later shifted to her interdisciplinary research in science, technology, and environmental policy. She founded an independent institute, the Research Foundation for Science, Technology, and Ecology, to address the most significant ecological and social issues in our time, in close relationship and partnership with local communities and social movements. In 1991, she founded Navdanya, a national movement to protect the diversity and integrity of living resources, especially native seed. the promotion of organic farming and fair trade. In 2004, she started an international college for sustainable living in collaboration with Schumacher College in the UK, which is in the UK, Schumacher College. Vandana is the author of many books. Her latest one was released in January.
Philanthrocapitalism.
That's it.
Capitalism, yeah.
Philanthrocapitalism and the Erosion of Democracy, a Global Citizens Report on the Corporate Control of Technology, Health, and Agriculture, which details how global philanthropic capitalist organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and affiliated entities effectively monopolize and privatize common land for food production in a manner that jeopardizes public health around the globe. So Vandana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Letitia. And thank you, Jen. Thank you. You provide the energy to get us all together and have the next deep analysis.
Thank you.
With lots of appreciation and lots of love, Jen. And that's why I stay up. I stay up for you.
Thank you so much.
You've already laid such a rich background. And I'm just going to go over my own life in terms of how many mutations money has made. When I was young, and I used to travel in India with my parents, we'd go to small places and they would totally be dealing with their own little local coins, and it was valid currency. And we lived in a pluralism of the local monies. Even in the US, Hazel Henderson, a dear friend and an economist, said that about 3,000 local currencies were created when the dollar, with that pyramid and that all-seeing eye, when the dollar collapsed. And people couldn't make their lives. So they create the local currencies as mere exchange, not as exchange in the disembodied way, but means of living, means of having access to resources. All my work on ecology over these decades, and now it's 50 years of working at both as an activist and scientist and a researcher, exactly as you've described, the entire machine runs on converting life to money. And then every measure that has been created that is made to look like so scientific and so neutral is nothing more than that conversion, which you've described so clearly, the parasitic conversion. So my life began with the Chipko movement. And what were women in the mountains, my sisters in the mountains, fighting against? The conversion of their forest to money. The commodification of the forest, first into timber and then timber into money. And they were saying these forests are our life. And they give us life. They give us soil and water and pure air, and all you see is money. These are not timber mines. These are not sources of profits. These are life. And every movement that I've been involved in, ordinary people actually recognize what you have elaborated, that their life is being converted to money for the billionaires. And that's how they become billionaires. There's an enclosure of the commons. Yeah. In, I think it's 1793, all of the land of India was made the property of England. But at the same time, the enclosures of the commons were taking place. And what was this doing? Taking the commons of Mother Earth, who supports life and gives us the gifts of life, into property to be owned and exploited to provide raw materials, which can be converted into money. Nature herself got redefined. Nature and the earth, the earth got redefined as the empty earth, the terra nullius. But nature and natural resources, which basically meant those that renew on their own, now became those that are raw material to generate profits. And then along the way, money itself got became mutant and became capital. Capital is merely a more mysterious naming of money. And as Carl, and I've always been fascinated by this, creation of value with the pyramid of the inert input of land and labor and capital as the creative force, and which means money as the creative force. And all my work on seeds and intellectual property and Monsanto's claim of owning seeds, or corporate claims on owning land, or Mr. Gates's takeover of farmland in America, which is all in the new report of movements, Capitalism, that has just been released. Carl Polanyi put it so well in The Great Transformation. So a market economy must compromise all elements of industry, including labor, land, money. But labor and land are no other than the human being themselves, of which every society consists, and the natural surroundings in which they exist. To include them in the market mechanism, which means in the money mechanism, means to subordinate the substance of society into the law of the market and the money. And this is exactly this parasitic relationship. I have had to work with so many movements who are resisting the destruction of their rivers, their forests, the takeover of their land, causing huge ecological disaster for investment and for GDP, the gross domestic product, GNP, the gross national product. And this has become the most powerful number, and it justifies anything. It is literally like the new religion. And as a powerful number, it is used constantly. This destruction will lead to growth, and you are coming in the way of growth. And so I remember years ago, I think it must be 1991, 92, I had been invited by the Norwegian Research Council to lay out their gender framework. And they'd also invited Marilyn Waring, who has written a book called If Women Counted. And she used to be the youngest MP in New Zealand who had actually stopped the nuclear. She's the one who was behind a nuclear-free New Zealand. And during one of the debates, she asked for more money for childcare. And she was told there isn't. And then the next MP asked for some money for more arms, and it was allocated. And she wanted to know, why is it that money is available all the time for wars and violence and never available for people, women and children? And so she went all the way to the roots of how GDP is calculated. And you know what the definition of growth in the national accounting systems, according to the UN, is? If you produce what you consume, you don't produce. In other words, if you're in a gift economy, you aren't in an economy. It's not an economy. And this is the invisibilization that you so repeatedly stress, Jen. And it's this invisibilization of the economy of life by the economy of money making. Aristotle had two very clear different words. Economia was art of living. Chrematistics is what is the capitalist patriarchy has really created. So money became capital, capital became investment, and investment became rights. So I've had to work on free trade agreements, beginning with the GATT, the WTO, and the latest group of free trade agreements all have a clause. And this clause is what's called the investor-state dispute settlements mechanism. What does it mean? It means if, according to the Constitution and democratic will of people, people do not want their water privatized, then a water corporation like Suez can sue and say, we've lost this much profits. Countries that don't want GMOs can be sued by the Monsantos. A nuclear company in Sweden sued Germany, Vattenfall, its name is, when after the Fukushima disaster, the Germans were forced to shut down all the nuclear plants. Vattenfall sued Germany, 4 billion or something. for loss of profits. So investor rights become higher than the rights of Mother Earth and the rights of people, the rights of women, children, communities. And then in the last decade, with the digital takeover of the world, we have seen two phenomena. The first is, of course, digitalization. And interestingly, India, which has so much poverty, but also so much wealth, we became the lab for digitalization of money. And a war was declared on cash. That's what it was called. The US aid, US embassy, and Bill Gates jointly just announced, our prime minister announced on their behalf. And 3 days later, Bill Gates was in India as congratulating India for the war on cash. Okay. And this means, of course, money, which is already a distortion, becomes even more distorted, because a woman selling vegetables for 10 rupees can keep her 10 rupees and accumulate her 10 rupees and 10 rupees, maybe go back to a village and send a child to school. Overnight, 90% of the hard-earned income of Indians, poor Indians, was taken. It evaporated into nothing. But of course, digitalization also means those who write the platforms become richer and richer and richer. And so if you look at, who got richer during the COVID, is 1.5 trillion additional wealth, the big technology firms, because they are now collecting rents through every transaction we make, every transaction, a child's interaction with a screen for education, my interaction with a vegetable vendor, all interactions. And I don't think any other countries suffered the kind of consequences India did. And I was triggered both by the Paris climate convention, climate summit, where Bill Gates was really dictating everything, and the 2016 demonetization, they called it, of digitalization. It's my book, Oneness versus 1%, which is published by Chelsea Green in the United States and by New Internationalists in UK and by my feminist press, Women Unlimited in India. But digitalization is then taking on two new forms. Yeah. So I find it fascinating that capitalist patriarchy has this very clever way of just adding tech to something and then appropriating it. You might remember, Jen, I think I remind you each time we meet, that when the basmati was patented by a company called Rice Tech, they stole our basmati and just put tech behind rice, and it was theirs. Yeah. Well, money now is finance, and it's the big giants like BlackRock and Vanguard. Again, a lot about this is written in my book, Oneness versus 1%. But out of nothing, after the 2008 Wall Street collapse, they have become the real big asset management funds, because the billionaires have become so rich. So this is where they put their money to make more money. And if you find anything unreasonable happening in the world, you will find Vanguard and BlackRock behind it. I'm sure if we dig a little, even what's going on in Ukraine, we'll find their investments one way or the other. Yeah. I remember it was, I think BlackRock was about 1 trillion when the Wall Street collapse happened in 2008. And the last time I looked, they were 9 trillion. And that's the kind of power they have. And when I did that book, I wanted to find out, how did Bayer buy Monsanto? And we said, it doesn't matter which company it is. They're all owned by these asset management funds now. All the corporations of the world, whether it's Coca-Cola or Amazon or Apple, at the end of it, it's the asset management funds. So they become fintech, and no regulations apply on them. They are totally non-transparent. But something more interesting happened, just at the time of lockdown, when COVID made us all stay home. I was sent this patent, because I've worked so much on patents and piracy. Someone sent me this patent. It's World Patent 0606, a Microsoft patent, March of 2020. And it's an interesting patent because it's basically saying humans, we are users. The word human being isn't there. Of course, men and women aren't there. Yeah, users who use the machines of the big tech. And according to the algorithms, they perform tasks allocated by the algorithms, and the algorithms make an assessment of their worth and value. And then they allocate value to us in cryptocurrency. Now, this is the dream by 2030. Yeah, this patent is a business patent, what the world will look like. So money now becomes cryptocurrency. Worse, cryptocurrency becomes associated with our worth and value. And just today, I was reading a report of the World Economic Forum. And interestingly, I had, my publisher insisted I do my life in movements and my movement memoir. And she just sent me the proofs. And I was remembering that, in 1999, we'd stopped WTO. 2000, Mr. Klaus Schwab invites me because, we've done something impossible as people in Seattle. We stopped WTO. And he had called it the Constitution of the World. So he invites me, and of course I do lectures and debate the World Bank, debate the DuPonts. And then again, they call me next year. And next year, the people are organized and they're protesting outside, and the protesters invite me to address them. So I walk out in the snow, and this policeman tries to beat me up. And I come back and tell poor Schwab, how can it be that you split me? When I'm inside, I'm your VIP guest, and when I'm outside, I'm a criminal. What kind of world are you trying to create? And if you do not apologize for the treatment you've given to young activists outside in the snow, I will never return. And I'll never accept your invitation. I think he even made me an advisor on globalization. And I've never gone back. But just today, I saw a new report he has issued from World Economic Forum, Digital Agency, how we will all be judged through social credit systems, which will be controlled by these 5 great men.
Oh, wow.
So if women have already been devalued, if our knowledge and our work did not count, can you imagine those capitalist patriarchs deciding who's worthy, who can live and who does not have to live? So your thinking, your leadership, Jen, is very vital at this moment, not just for women, but for humanity. Let's continue to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana. Yes, I think it's so critical at this time. Both of your voices are so very, very important. And I think this is a conversation that we'll continue to have in our salons throughout this year, hopefully. So, Vandana, thank you so much for those very dynamic and powerful words. Our next speaker, Cassie, we're so happy to have you with us for this first conversation today. Cassie Thornton is an artist and an activist who makes a safe space for the unknown, for disobedience, and for unanticipated collectivity. She uses social practices, including institutional critique, insurgent architecture, and healing modalities like hypnosis and yoga to find soft spots in the hard surfaces of a capitalistic life. Cassie has invented a grassroots alternative credit reporting service for the survivors of gentrification, has hypnotized hedge fund managers, has finger painted with grime found inside banks, has donated cursed paintings to profiteering bankers, and has taught feminist economics to yogis, and vice versa. Her new book is The Hologram, Feminist Peer-to-Peer Health for a Post-Pandemic Future. Welcome, Cassie.
Oh, thank you so much. It means so much to be here. Is my sound okay? It's okay? Okay, good. So I'm actually here. I wish I could turn my computer and not ruin everything, but I'm here with maybe like 20 people or so who are all quite excited that this panel is happening. It's such a dreamy group of people, and I'm so honored to be here with you. I can't even believe it. I thought that I would actually, I think the best thing that I can do is tell you an experiment that I'm working on, which is about kind of trying to make almost like an inverted pyramid scheme for care. And it's really an attempt to make an economy without money for regular people to participate in. So for the last many years, I've been a debt activist. I'm from the US, and maybe that's important context. And so, you know, my whole life in my family and in my personal life was, as an adult, was everything was paid for in debt. And so I think I spent a lot of my career as an artist and as an activist trying to figure out if I was a total failure, if I did something wrong, if we did something wrong, or if it was actually kind of more of a systemic problem. And so I've now spent, you know, most of my life kind of trying to deconstruct and reconstruct, like, what is debt, whether it's financial or you know, moral, or if it's payable or unpayable. I've spent most of my life trying to understand what it is and how it has so much control over us. So I've done a lot of work as an activist and as an artist, and really trying to take debt as a material and work with it and see, like, if we can, how can we sort of like dislodge debt from our unconscious. And the reason that I ended up using debt and not money was because I was raised in a weird way by Occupy Wall Street. I was a part of both the Occupy Wall Street in New York and in Oakland. And so at a certain point, we decided as a group to talk about debt as a way to talk about money and the monetary system control, monetary system's control over our lives. So it's kind of a lens for me. But I think that over the years as an artist, I became really, really clear about the way that debt and capitalism and money, in fact, impacts our ways of, like, what we believe is possible, who we think we are, how we're connected to society, how maybe, for many people, how we're not connected to society, how we're sort of personally responsible. And so, you know, I think as an artist, I learned very clearly, like, how to show the impact of money, the money system, and of debt on us as individuals, and why it's so hard to work collectively. And then after many years of doing that, as well as working with groups like Strike Debt and Debt Collective and other sort of economic justice organizations, I began to really want a different approach that would sort of undermine some of the things that I was realizing that we had internalized from capitalism. And so I was really watching, I've been watching international debt crises and the way they relate to colonialism and the sort of different forms of resistance to them. But when Greece was declared bankrupt in the early 2010s, I was living in Oakland, California. And I became really, really interested in the response that Greek people had to bankruptcy, which was that they organized many, many free clinics all over Greece, up to 60. And I was just so blown away because it was pre-Trump, but I was living in the US without healthcare, without access to healthcare, but that's normal, and without access to any sort of financial stability, and that was normal. But we didn't really see it as a kind of crisis to be kind of creative about. And I think the other thing about this response to debt and austerity that I was so moved by was that the Greeks dealt with health. And we know, I think among us in this room, we know how much, like, the monetary system and debt and oppression and power, how much they impact our bodies and our abilities to survive. Like, I think not only are we, like, many of us in the world are unable to actually reproduce ourselves because we can't have access to money. Our sense of failure within the money system and the way that power moves through money definitely enters our body. And I'm sure, I mean, I feel like Miki Kashtan has taught me so much about this. I mean, there's so many there's so many ways to talk and think about that, but I think overwhelmingly, I was just, as an American person, I was so moved to see that the response to a lack of money was to create free healthcare. And it was also at the time of a great migrant crisis and an influx of people that needed medical care who would come to Greece to get it. So there's free clinics all over Greece, run by volunteer and assembly, some in squats, some by NGOs. But one clinic in particular in Thessaloniki that I learned about, almost like it was like a rumor that I heard, was that there was a clinic that was offering not only free care, but also wanted to challenge the ideas and the practices in healthcare to try to make non-hierarchical care possible. They did lots of really interesting experiments, including this thing called the integrative model. And so the integrative model was just simply that when a person came into the doctor's office, they were seen by a doctor and a social worker and a therapist at the same time. And those people asked them questions about their entire self, like, what are their working conditions? Where do they get their food? Who's in their family? To whom do they owe debt? And I think it began to teach the people that were working on this model that they could see somebody's health they can only see someone's health when they can see all the conditions that they're living in, and they can see them from all these different dimensions. And so for many years, I've now been in conversation with the people that developed this integrative model. But when I learned about it, I felt like this was something so familiar, like this is a type of healthcare that everyone should have already always existed, and maybe it did, and I didn't know it. I just felt so obsessed with it. And so I spent the next couple of years working with different groups of people to figure out how could we do this ourselves, especially in the US where medicine has been completely privatized. But how could we even begin to want this type of a care that maybe isn't coming through money and isn't coming through private agencies? And so me and various groups of friends and collaborators worked to define this integrative model as something that we could practice in the US among peers. And so it's been about 8 years that I've been working on it, first as a theoretical concept and now as more of a grassroots pedagogical project that me and many collaborators are working to help other people try. And so this is actually, I've just sort of gotten us to ground level so I can explain how it works as an economic model without money, and one that also sort of challenges some of our inherited kind of capitalist practices that I think we don't even know that we necessarily have. So we talk about first I'm going to say a little bit about how it works. So first of all, a person that wants to work on the hologram project has to start with themselves. So they invite 3 people to support them, and those 3 people ask them questions about their physical health, their mental health, and their social health. And the idea is that that person meets in this formation regularly over time. And the idea is that there's a commitment made between these 4 people that they're going to meet, they're going to have an enduring relationship. So this is the first way that I think we're sort of pushing up gently against some of capitalism's control over our brains and our hearts and our ways of thinking, is that it invites us to make a plan with people we know that endures time, goes past our 3-month ability to think into the future, and that says that when there are inevitable crises, we will face them together, that these 3 people are going to support this one person. And this is not a contract. This is an agreement, and I really believe that in this project, we're also pushing up against lots of ideas about contracts. We don't need a contract if the people that are engaged in the project really want to be there and really want to do the work. And so we've gone through lots of opportunities to work on the blockchain, to tokenize, to make contracts. And I think that we have decided always to really work with people that we know, to work through desire, to talk when things are difficult, and to create long-term stability for each other that outlasts what capitalism allows us to think about. The second thing about the sort of mechanics about the project that's really important to understand and that makes this into a kind of post-money economic model is that all the people that are receiving care, who we call the hologram does not reciprocate. They don't give back what they receive from the people that are supporting them. So I have 3 people who support me, and I ensure that each of those people have 3 people or have the care that they need in order for me to feel okay receiving the care and attention from them that they want to give to me. And this is so important because I think in so many ways, like, we've been taught to want things that are, it's become easier to work in abstraction. It's become easier to get help from somebody that we don't know. It's become normal to get a payday loan through an app than to ask somebody you know for help. And so there's so many different ways that this project makes people vulnerable. It makes them ask for support in a way that usually in the economy at this point, money, as Genevieve says, like, money becomes the communication. Like, you put down money and you get the thing. But in this situation, you have to ask for it, you have to communicate about the value, and then you have to receive something. And I think it creates so many different dynamics for people, mostly the fear of being a burden. And so I think, like, what we're dealing with in the hologram are moments when we're actually confronting, like, the way that capitalism has trained us and having to kind of like physically, emotionally, mentally, like, go past it. So the hologram has 3 people that supports them. Those 3 people have their own method of support. And the idea is that we're not getting caught in a loop of exchange. It's like, it has to be viral, and you have to believe that in some way you're creating a culture where the energy that you put in is circulating, and you have to arrange it. It's not automatic, but it is circulating, and you're a part of a distributed network of care and energy and time. And there's so many different ways in which this is very difficult at first, because it brings up lots of different pain and anxiety, because I think, like, we want to make exchange as our habit. It's the only thing we know in a weird way. And I just, there's this thing that with people where they want to, they don't want to give without receiving. They don't want to separate the 2 things out. And I think this is something that I've gotten so much from both Miki's work and Genevieve's work, is that, like, when you can separate giving from receiving, you're able to experience things without debt, without indebtedness. So when you can give without expecting something back, you can actually give what you want to give. And when you can receive without feeling like you're going to owe something, you can actually just receive things. And I feel like this is, like, these things, which are, like, so basic to a gift economy, have been, so repressed or taken out of us. And so anyway, I think that I guess I'll say one last thing about the hologram. The general model is that it's not therapy, and it can't be therapy. It has to create a feeling of being like a kind of culture and a kind of a collective movement. And I don't know what's going to happen. We talk about it as a practice that creates stability and health so that we can survive the end of capitalism and make new forms with stuff we already have. And there's a big jump there between, like, we're doing this practice that feels at times therapeutic, and then at the same time we're saying we are going to not only end capitalism but build something new. So there's a kind of, like, a bit of a faith project in it. But then I think at this point, lots of people practice it, and we're interested in ways of kind of sharing it larger. And the one thing that has been this, like, super important technology, which I think relates back to where we are together here right now, is just that all of us who practice it many of us meet every month online to talk about it and to compare notes and to support each other, because I think this is how we make it not therapy, and we make it not just about personal transformation, but, like, it is about personal transformation so that we can do a lot else in the world. And I think it's about this sort of like preparing ourselves to be a part of society in a different way, preparing ourselves to like ask for help, and being able to do that in community that is like really what money ruins. And I think just, you know, these structures where you get to actually compare notes and like grow together and understand that we're kind of going into the unknown. It's been really interesting. And I think we're just starting as a collective of people who have been practicing the hologram now for a couple of years, like most of us, like about 2 years. We're starting to be able to talk about it as an economy, and there's people doing it that are coming to it just out of need, but they can now sort of discuss and think about how they're actually like experiencing something that is economic without money. And I think that in itself is very interesting. So I think that's it for now.
Thank you so much, Cassie. I love this idea of this healthcare without money, so vitally important. And I think that COVID has actually moved us forward in that
You're
direction.
muted.
I think our sound might be off.
It's
Or-
our sound, yeah.
Oh, it's hard.
And I hope that your model gets out there. I put in the chat a place where people can find out about your book. And I also put Vandana's website for more of her work. And it seems just perfect that we're now going to bookend the talks with Miki, because Cassie has referenced both Genevieve and Miki's work. So welcome back, Miki. Miki Kashtan is a practical visionary pursuing a world that works for all based on principles and practices rooted in feminist nonviolence. Miki is the founding member of Nonviolent Global Liberation, NGL, community, whose purpose is to integrate nonviolence into the fabric of human life through ongoing live experiments with truth focused on individual and collective liberation. One of the most consistent experiments within NGL is the commitment to operate on a full gift basis with both money and other resources. Miki is the author, most recently, of Highest Common Denominator, using convergent facilitation to reach breakthrough collaborative decisions, and blogs at Fearless Heart, often exploring theoretical, practical, political, and spiritual questions related to patriarchy, capitalism, and gifting. Welcome, Miki. You can read more about Miki at her website.
Thank you. What a treat to be here and to hear all the deep thinking and caring that all the people who spoke before me. So, so much has been covered. And what I want to do is connect some dots through looking at aspects of the distortion of moving from gifting to exchange that have to do with human needs, because that's often the angle through which I enter things. And everybody else started with some kind of a personal story, so I will too. And that one happened when I was 5. It started when I was 5. I don't remember it. My mother told me. We went to the store to get something, and I asked her a question that to this day no one has been able to answer. It's a really simple question. Question is, why is it that we have to pay for what we need? Why can't we just take the things that we need and go? And by extension, everyone else. It was evident in the question. And my mother obviously didn't know how to answer, and no one has. I subsequently, for years, found myself really confused about economics. I was not able to make sense of it. So much so that when I needed some credits in order to finish an academic degree faster than otherwise, I decided, okay, I will do an advanced placement exam in economics, so I will actually finally understand what it is. And so I took the macroeconomics exam. I read the Samuel and Samuelson Economics Bible cover to cover. I did the exam. I aced it. I'm very good with numbers. So I aced it. I was able to manipulate all the equations. I was in the 90-something percentile, and I still couldn't make any sense of what was there. And it was years later, I was walking somewhere and it hit me, and I understood why I wasn't able to make sense of economics. And that I later went and checked it. It's in the definition of economics. It's the study of the allocation of scarce resources. And I could not make sense of the assumption of scarcity. That was my problem for why I couldn't understand this. Scarcity is created. I now believe, I've now done a lot of research about this and thinking and reading and writing. Scarcity is not natural to life. Finitude is. Having only limited amount of things is completely natural to life. That is our challenge as living beings with consciousness, is how do we care for needs in the context of finitude? Scarcity is a relationship to finitude that is based on fear. So when there is a finite amount, it becomes scarcity when we are frightened. But how did that ever get created in a world where there is natural abundance, where if anyone takes only what they need, not more and not less, it regenerates, abounds? It's a verb. To abound it has to do with regeneration. More comes if you don't overtake. How did that ever happen? It happened through accumulation. Because once you accumulate and take more than you need, there isn't then enough for the regeneration to happen and for everyone's needs to be attended to. So in the same move, you create artificial surplus and manufactured scarcity. They're twin evils. You can't eliminate one without the other. This is why the question of poverty, how to get rid of extreme poverty, is an unnecessary question. Sure, the suffering is very real and very necessary, but it's an unnecessary question because all you need to do is get rid of extreme wealth, and extreme poverty will completely take care of itself. So back to human needs. So in my question at 5-year-old was, why can't we just take what we need and go without pay? And this is because, as Jen says so often, we all viscerally know the gift economy because we would not have survived without it. All of us depend on somebody, and sometimes it is not freely given. Under conditions of patriarchy and capitalism, often enough, the giving of mothers is constrained psychologically, sometimes even systemically. It still is unilateral giving only because we have a need. The baby doesn't have to produce money and say, Mom, give me milk, here's some money. The need, the resources go to the need because the need exists. So in the world of gifting, needs have power. They're not just experiences, they're power, because my need, when you are aware of it, my need creates in you the capacity and the willingness to give to me. If you have it to give, if you don't, you don't. But if you have it to give, knowing that I have the need increases the flow. So needs are powerful. That's what we came from, knowing that our needs are powerful. And then that gets lost because market economies are not oriented to needs. They are oriented to something very abstract that is called effective demand. It's a technical term in economics. It is not a radical term. When I say that economics is about scarcity, again, it's not radical. This is how economics defines itself. What it is effective demand means a need that has resources behind it to back it up, usually money. In other words, in order for my need to get met, I need to have money. That means my need itself is no longer powerful. It's only the money that makes it powerful. And so we live in a world of weakness where we feel powerless because our needs don't carry weight. We are in permanent anxiety. That's why I love so much what Cassie is doing, because it exits the market. It makes us orient towards each other, restoring some preliminary sense of community when we orient towards each other on the material plane. It's not just because interest-based. It's we actually orient around our needs. We bind our lives together around needs. Capitalism can't stand it. That's why capitalism attacks the commons, because the commons are where people orient towards each other and the non-human life in order to care for their needs while caring for everything else. Before capitalism could start, everybody had to be torn from land and from community in a variety of ways, including land enclosures, colonization, slave trade, and witch hunts. You can read about it in Silvia Federici's Caliban and the Witch. So at this time, we are separated from each other, from ourselves, from life, and money mediates all of it. So that's the picture of how we live. I want to emphasize the piece that Cassie talked about in terms of the difficulty in uncoupling. It is much more difficult for most of us who are habituated to exchange to receive without giving than to give without receiving. Because receiving without giving means I am in debt. Being in debt means I could become a slave. That is deeply ingrained in our consciousness, even if we don't know the history, because it lives through intergenerational trauma. So I just want to see if I left out anything that I wanted to say. Yeah, 2 small bits and then I will be done. One is that we have the concept of deserving is the one that runs our willingness to maintain the exchange economy, because the concept of deserving, just like money and exchange sit on top of the gifting and hide it, deserving sits on top of needs and hide them. If I deserve, then my need counts. If I don't deserve, then my need doesn't count. And we all believe in the deserving. A doctor deserves to have more money than a woman who cleans houses. Why is that? The doctor doesn't have more needs than the woman who cleans houses. It's only because we believe that it is okay under the deserving thing. And the very last thing I want to say is that all of it, the whole exchange market framework, rests on a certain view of human nature that is itself the result of patriarchy and later capitalism. And it's a view of human nature that says, unless there is an incentive, external incentive, we're not going to care, we're not going to do anything to attend to anybody's needs. So we need to be in contractual relationships, because otherwise we will all be exploited. which we are anyway. And so we now no longer think in terms of needs, we think in terms of rights. Rights make us deserve something, give us an adversarial claim over what exists, instead of just the vulnerability of putting our needs out and seeing where the capacity and the resources will come from. That's what we're trying to recreate, is the focus on needs and the resources flowing through needs. And that's maybe for another day. I think this is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Miki.
Wonderful.
I think it's so beautiful the way that we've encapsulated this from theory to lived practice and tips for actually perhaps getting into the flow of the gift. And I'm looking at the time because I really wish we could do this in an entire day or an entire weekend. Unfortunately, we only have about 30 more minutes left, 35 minutes left for questions. But I want to alleviate some of the pressure and anxiety. Early, when Jen and I were on before the meeting started, I suggested that we do another salon on money so that we can cover more areas. So I hope that alleviates some of the pressure and anxiety, to remind you to continue to communicate with us and each other your questions. But until then, Jen, do you have anything that you would like to say before we actually move into the questions and answers?
Not really, but just thank everybody because you're so smart, so engaged, and so doing it when it's very important. And so I appreciate it. Love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I see that Vandana has actually slipped out, which is just so that you know, it's the reason that we have her on early, because it becomes very late in her time. So we hope that she may come back, but if not, we'll definitely have her on again. So with that, Liliana, do you have a question for us that we can open up with?
Yeah, I have a question from Ruth Miron. And she asked to all the panelists, are you formulating a replacement system to money and to exchange?
Jen,
No.
would you like to? No. Can you just say a little more why you don't want to replace money?
Oh, I think that would recreate the whole problem. You know, I mean, I don't think there is a good money. We have to be able to have human relations where we can distribute the goods and satisfy each other's needs. We'll become much better people that way.
Thank you, Jen. Miki, would you like to?
Yeah, I have understood the question differently, whether we are actually ready to formulate a system that is a replacement to money and exchange. And I'm wondering, Jen, understanding it this way, if you want to answer again, what system would we offer instead of money and exchange?
I'm sorry, I really can't answer that. I don't
No
know.
problem.
I'm
happy to. I'm happy to, because I have actually thought about this for years. And a lot of people in a lot of places talk about that we need to make an evolutionary leap. And when I think about what that evolutionary leap is, the way that I understand it is the capacity to care about the whole, which exists and is manifested in indigenous cultures, but it's more localized within indigenous cultures, the whole as is known. And I think that we can and have the capacity to care for the whole of the biosphere. It's coming, it's popping. For at least some of us, it's already there. I think it's within our makeup. And that means the willingness to give and the willingness to receive to and from people that we don't know personally, that are not with us in physical location. And so I have a whole picture of how we can map, inventory needs and resources by ecoregion, which is a slightly different system than bioregion. It includes human activities. It's not just what the geography is. Map needs and resources within each subplace and see how much of the local needs can actually be addressed by local resources, and then create flows of resources only where it's needed between ecoregions. And so it's not like global moving things from everywhere to everywhere like we have now, which is destroying the planet, but very careful attention to what can be done super locally and slightly less locally within a region, and moving resources between regions only when it's really necessary, which also includes significant reduction in consumption. The consumption that we now have is unsustainable. And we all need to recognize that, and recognize that consuming at the level that we do is a substitute for actually getting our needs met, because the things that we consume don't actually speak to needs. They speak to manufactured anxiety-based needs, because we can't have the real pleasure and connection and freedom that we really need. That's a little bit. Of course, there's more, but not at the moment.
Thanks, Miki. Cassie, did you have something that you'd like to offer to that question? Because I see your experiment, and Miki also has an experiment that is really addressing that directly as one place. If we're making a list, this is one place you could do it. Here's another place that you could do it. That was my take on that question.
Thank you. Yeah. I think the question is the most important question to ask. I don't have an answer besides, like, I think that like what we do every day and our habits make our lives, and our lives are what produces the world. And the way we live is the economy. And so, I feel like I'm really interested in getting people to the point where they can ask that question about, like, what is the horizon? What's the horizon beyond the market? Because I think most people actually just can't actually imagine wanting something beyond money, because they haven't had the time or the space, or they haven't been asked enough. They haven't had enough experiences that they can sit with and think through as sort of, I feel like it's about cultivating situations where people can wish for something beyond money. And so I feel like that's what I do in my artwork and in the hologram. But I feel like the hologram is just an experiment for us to exercise some muscles so that we can begin to desire something beyond the market horizon. Yeah.
Thanks, Cassie. I would just like to say that perhaps replacing money and those systems is not really what needs to happen. The maternal gift economy movement itself is really about stripping away the whole notion with the direct emphasis on money. And so understanding the maternal gift economy is actually lifting the veil about how we already live, and we need to trust how we know to live to be able to engage in those vulnerable places that require challenging and difficult relationships with yourself to find out what your needs are, and then to establish relationships with others, that you have a community and a network where you can express your needs and have your needs fulfilled. But that is really, I think, where the leap is, and that's a human transition that's required of breaking this sort of hypnotic ideology that just, is like an earworm. Every time you think that there's a possibility that you can get out of the money trap and the death trap, you start visualizing and thinking and knowing those connections, and then the fear and the money chatter starts to come back in and pulls you back in. So, and I would challenge everyone here that if you make a list of all the places that you see a gift where you've had the experience of both giving and receiving gifts, that we could transform the market quite sooner. That would be the challenge I would say, and share it with everyone here. So Judith, do you have a question for us?
The news right now is full of the what's going on in Ukraine and how it's been fostered by the large manufacturers of military equipment, and how they're looking for a solution to be cutting Russia and Putin off from the international monetary community. And I just ask if the panelists have any comments on what other options might be, especially in the framework of the gift economy.
That's a giant question. So Jen, you want to take a chunk out of that?
Well, I'd like to say the truth is a gift. When you tell the truth, you're satisfying the other person's need. When you tell a lie, you're satisfying your own at the other person's expense. And our society is so full of lies. All of it's very hard to tell what the truth is. And so I think, the first step towards making peace would be to know the truth. And it's also another step is to disbelieve what you hear. So to realize, first of all, that you're not getting a gift usually, you're not hearing the truth, and to insist on the truth being told, and to celebrate and help the truth tellers.
Thank you, Jen. Miki?
I have a very short piece, which I have thought about since many, many years. For any war, it may seem naive, but I think naive is what we need now. And that is that I don't know how to organize it, or I would have done it. Imagine 100,000 women, and I'm thinking women because of how women are treated, actually utilizing some of the ways that we are made different. 100,000 women going to any place where there is war, and standing there and challenging the armies to actually stop the war, because otherwise they're going to be shooting women who are civilians unrelated to the particular challenge there is. So I fully believe that this is a way to stop war, but I don't know how to experiment with it because I am not a good organizer. It's not my strength. That's my idea, and it's a form of gift.
Thank you, Miki. Cassie, do you have anything you'd like to offer to that question?
I want to think about that question all week. I just think it's so, I feel like I'm just going to keep saying that these are such good questions, because they are. And I feel like the question of how to not use money to continue, money as a form of control and discipline. I'm curious what, I'm curious about sort of like abolitionist perspectives mixed with a sort of gift economy perspective for this. Yeah, can we have that for the next salon, that question?
We'll keep that in mind, Cassie. Thank you for that. Jen, did you have anything else you wanted to offer, or are we good for now to go on to the next question?
I'll go ahead. Yeah, I do think that the people who are protesting against war for whatever reason are trying to give a gift too.
Thanks, Jen. So Liliana, do you have another question for our panel?
Yes, I have a question from Rebecca Gentian. Can any of the presenters speak to the idea of earning, inspired by Miki referencing deserving, particularly when our needs are not met outside of the market? I'm thinking specifically of young mothers being told to hire help when they express their overwhelmed need for support.
Miki, would you like to elaborate, and then I'll go to Jen and then Cassie.
I am not sure exactly what the connection is. Earning clearly is an aspect of deserving. And so I think it's not clear to me what is being asked in terms of hiring help. I am guessing that the piece that is being talked about here is that the women don't actually have the capacity to hire help and don't necessarily want to hire help. They want to be part of a community, a communal version of raising children, which is the way that it always went and the way that I think we would all want it to go. I'm not sure that I fully understand the question to be able to say more than this.
Okay, thank you. Jen, do you have any
Yes,
thoughts?
well, we always have to remember that in a market economy, patriarchal capitalism, gift giving is difficult and mothering is difficult, and we don't have the kind of support that we need, just like Miki said. So it is not the fault of gift giving that you have to find some other way of getting support, but it is not a revolutionary act to do that. You just have to put it in parentheses and go on to try to change what you can. And also to realize, that it is not the fault of the gift economy or of mothering, but of the context in which you're doing it.
Thanks, Jen. Cassie, do you have any thoughts on the question that you might want to share? Oh, you're muted, my friend. There you go.
So, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not exactly sure also about the question, but I guess for me, economic self-defense in this situation seems relevant. Like the person that is doing the care work, they need to earn a wage. Care work is important, valuable work, and earning particular when I guess I'm not sure of like what the question or the tension is in this, because I mean I feel like this is something that I guess it's almost kind of automated. I mean I've been reading and learning a little bit about like the sort of very many multifaceted care platforms that are sort of taking over local and international markets that have really problematic relationships with local and national governments, where low wage care work is being like extracted and redistributed, and as Vandana was talking about, like the tech companies are like skimming off the top of all of it, and it's so I think the question is tied to lots of like really complicated systems that are very insidious and growing by the moment. But I think nobody can provide all the care that's necessary for a child or for a home by themselves, and they shouldn't have to. And so redistributing money through distributing care work, I think, can be okay when you do it well and do it with care and with good ethics. But I feel like there might be a question under this question, and maybe Rebecca might type something else in, and we might learn more like what the tension is, so that we could address it better.
Thanks, Cassie, for that. So Rebecca, if you're still here, maybe you can clarify in another question. Judith, do you have another question for us?
Actually, Sephora, she says Cassie has a great venture that she's undertaking, and she wonders if there are alternative health practitioners, which is a misnomer because they are healthcare practitioners rooted in older indigenous and alternate healthcare frameworks, and whether there are any in her group. And because these older systems such as Ayurveda and Chinese medicine already take the whole person into account, although these systems also have consumer objectives as part of the market, but they do point to expanding the idea of holistic healthcare, and as looking at the whole person and not just trying to alleviate sickness or illness. And so it's a different way of being in the world, and how that relates to gifting and what we've been talking about in this, and money, and how we've been talking in this salon.
Cassie, would you like to respond?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. There are a lot of different types of practitioners that are involved in the hologram as facilitators or organizers, or nobody that is specifically involved in Ayurveda, but lots of people that are involved in Chinese medicine. And a big inspiration for the hologram was the history of acupuncture and barefoot doctors in China, as well as the way that community acupuncture moved through radical communities like the Young Lords and the Black Panthers in the US. So like that's kind of in the DNA. But I think that the important thing to say about the hologram in relation to other forms of care is that most other forms of care still, you have to access them through the market. And so for so many different reasons, we may not always have that access. And so the hologram aims to just be sort of like to exist underneath other forms of care, and to maybe even help a person access the types of professional care with, whatever practitioners that you need. But yeah, I think that the goal is to create a sort of like long-term person-to-person relationship that means that a person could actually know what kind of care they want to get and have support in finding it. Yeah, maybe that's the start to the answer of the question.
Thank you, Cassie. Miki or Jen, do you have any comments that you'd like to make about this question about care? Because there were lots of different types of care that the question had in it that were holistic. So I don't know if you have anything to offer, if you want us to go to another question.
I have something very small, which is to highlight again the way that we think about money. So I don't remember exactly when it happened, but at one point in Oregon, there was a group of people that tried to push through an initiative to create what in the US is called a single payer program, which is a code word for socialized medicine, which is a term you cannot use in the US. So they tried to pass something like this through, and they thought through all the details, including how to allocate expensive procedures or different things like this, of which there isn't necessarily going to be enough for everyone. And within their proposal, they included ways of thinking about it that were need-based, meaning you would give those expensive things to the people who need them most. And they were shot down because they were told, you are rationing medicine. Now, medicine is rationed all the time, but it's rationed based on money, and that doesn't register as rationing. So it's when you actually bring needs and make them visible, suddenly you get this idea of rationing, but not when there's money and, oh, too bad you don't have money, you don't get to have this expensive procedure. That was a very telling moment for me when I found out about this. And I see the relationship with the question, but it's not a direct response.
I'm wondering in these last moments if each of you, Jen, Cassie, and Miki, would like to offer some closing words. And I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question and comments today. I want you to know that our speakers will be receiving copies of both the comments and the Q&A that they'll be able to take a look at. And we put in the chat a way that you can take a look at more of each of our speakers' materials and perhaps a way to contact them if you wanted to see if they might be able to answer you directly. So are there any closing words that you'd like to have, Miki, while you're there?
I want to just say very briefly that what I'm talking about is not a pie in the sky. Converting the whole world to work based on needs is a long and arduous road that I don't know if it will manage to make, because the struggle is against such extreme powers. Vandana was completely covering that part of it. And still, each of us can take steps. So I want to just say in very small, quick words, what some of the steps are. One is to uncouple giving from receiving. Look for opportunities everywhere to give without receiving. Look for opportunities everywhere to receive without giving. That's one part of the practice. Another part of the practice is to look for attending to material needs outside the market. Who has the thing that you want to buy that may be willing to give it to you or lend it to you, so that you don't have to buy? If you have things, how do you give them to others, etc.? And the last thing is the hardest, which is all of us can deaccumulate. Those of us who have more than we need, we can simply release it back to circulation. That will go a long way. It's not about donating. It's not about philanthropy. It's about releasing our accumulation and allowing it to go back into the commons.
Thank you, Miki. Cassie, are there some closing words you'd like to offer?
I mean, I just want to say back so many different things that have been spoken. But the thing that is just really sitting with me is it is the centering of needs. And, I'm just really curious about applying, needs in something, in a project. I think in the hologram, we say that like the person that asks for help is like an expert and they're a teacher. And this is like, it's really basic to the project and it's really challenging, but I think it is like a sort of subtle shift in really trying to like understand that like people who have had, well, we all like experience in our lifetimes, we have temporary moments of ability, but like, many, many moments of different forms of disability or needing help. And that the person that can articulate their needs and ask for help, I think wound into how Miki is describing, like a kind of an economy in a world that centers needs. Like, I think right now, the person who asks for help and can articulate their needs are kind of best teachers, and are, you know, like it's a special kind of expertise, and I'm trying to kind of like tune myself to it a little bit, and not to like let myself be so automated in terms of what I believe the ways that I need to serve the world, the ways that I need to participate in community, but to actually really sort of tune into a more nuanced sense of need. And so I mostly just like, yes, like this is a really interesting proposal. I want to take it into my project in practice, or our project in practice. And I guess I mostly just want to say thank you to all of you that were here and in conversation, because I'm just like, this was so inspiring, and I'm just so honored to have been a witness, much less a participant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. And I heard a little rumor that you will be joining us again on a salon, we hope in the not too distant future, where we offer a salon, because there's this language of what's called gifting circles. And we want to just clarify what that means, because some of the circles that call themselves gifting are really pyramid schemes. They're not really goddess gifting circles. So we look forward to having you back. So Jen, would you like to have some closing words?
Well, I think one thing is that we really need to shift the consciousness so that people can understand the value of gifting and understand what it is, and that it is an alternative. Otherwise, they won't understand it, and they can't move towards it. But I also think there are many different roads towards it, and many different ways of organizing, and also that every attempt to create social change is an attempt to satisfy the need for social change, and so it's a gift. So there. And thank you all so much for your beautiful work and everything.
Thank you, Jen. So do you think we could coax at least one more salon on money specifically? Because this is a topic we really need to drill down on. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that. And I want to just thank our guest speakers, Genevieve, Vaughan, Vandana, Shiva, Cassie, Thornton, Miki, Kashtan, for your wonderful and wise words. Liliana and Judith, for your attention on both the chat and the Q&A to bring some questions forward. I know we didn't have very much time today to respond to those directly. Diane and Elena, for your tech support that always holds a space for us to feel free to be able to do this work and gift it to the world. And for each of you for joining us. And while you are here.
Great, Letitia, and for you for doing the most amazing, consistent work of moderating and facilitating these with so much grace and so much wisdom. You never thank yourself, so I thought I would do it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yes, I want to thank all of you, because this truly is a gift, a place that I can give my gift. And I think this is where we need to recognize what is our true need and where can we give our gift freely. So that is a challenge to you and a gift to you. And while we're here together, just for a beat, I want to just take the moment for us to recognize together and open our hearts to the Ukraine. There are so many difficult challenges in the world today, but this one is really on the precipice of moving us into a horrific situation. So if you could, just for a moment, open your heart, and whatever vision you'd like to see for a sustainable, peaceful future, just hold that for a minute. Less than a minute. I'm going to give you a few seconds. And I'm shouting out to Aria and Mary Claire, who are tending the Sekhmet temple in their Saturn return today, that energetically, they hold this and offer it to Sekhmet. And may it be so. So everyone, we want to invite you back in 2 weeks to join us on March the 12th. We know we're going to have Max Dashu with us. We're very excited about that, and another special guest that we will reveal as we get that secured. So please do join us. And everyone, just take really good care. The gift economy, the maternal gift economy, everything that you're doing is really helping us to really shift and return to the gift. So please continue. Don't be discouraged. Know that we're out here with you. Our salon is recorded and you can find it on our website probably by the end of the weekend, the maternalgifteconomymovement.org. If you have any questions or comments, feedbacks, or suggestions, I know there's lots of ideas that you have, you can always email us at maternalgifteconomy@gmail.com. So we will see you in 2 weeks, and everyone, please be safe, take really good care, peace. Bye for now.
Thank you.